right, we are back. Henry, what are we going to call this podcast?
I would call it probably, I guess the podcast about movies, video games, and the works.
All right,
I was thinking Henry Brito show.
Ah, yeah.
I don't. I kind of feel
Burrito
like
Hour?
I don't know because I would say like I guess Henry's podcast talk. I would say that. Because where we talk about any kind of thing forms like video games, movies, the works. You guys tell me what kind of stuff it was. I don't mind questioning some of them.
Henry has it. Henry have it. Henry. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
The Burrito Bunch.
No, I would just say I would just say just Henry's podcast talk. That was it. That's it. Because like
All right.
that's mine. That's fine with me.
All right, cool.
Okay, you heard it here first.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we're back at it today again. We're going to be doing episode 2. We're on our Tekken journey. We kind of already wrapped up Tekken 1, kind of learned the backstory, kind of gameplay. What was the name of the company that made it?
Bandai Namco.
Bandai Namco.
Shout out Bandai.
Yeah, man. And then now we're getting into today, we're going to be getting into Tekken 2. Give us some of the backstory, the connection from Tekken 1 going to Tekken 2, and then some of the things that changed. And like Geraldo was saying, some of maybe the characters that changed and maybe what made it better also because it's part 2. They're going to always be getting better, hopefully.
Yeah, there's a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay, so recap of Tekken 1. Kazuya ends up, after 20 years of, trying to become strong enough, like defeating stuff, Kazuya eventually defeats Heihachi, throws him off of a cliff, and is successful in taking over the Mishima Zaibatsu. But he's a lot more crueler than Heihachi, because he makes a lot of critical stuff and is very cruel towards the people in the world immediately, and is willing to make a bunch of harsh decisions that can eventually lead up to people not liking him. Heihachi eventually survives the cliff fall and trains to become strong enough to take on Kazuya. And so Kazuya ends up making a deal with the devil gene inside of his heart. And we get introduced to a new character in the series by the name of Angel, who is like the representation of purification. Like she's trying to purify Kazuya's heart of the devil gene. And so the King of Iron Fist Tournament 2 begins. And, instead of Kazuya being focused as the main character, it's now Heihachi. And he's trying, and now everybody's standing with Heihachi to stop Kazuya. And eventually, Heihachi is successful in stopping Kazuya. But, hey, there's a little twist on this. Instead of throwing him off of a cliff, he said, you know what? I'm going to do it even worse. I'm going to throw him off into a volcano. and so Kazuya ends up getting thrown into a volcano by his father. And his father just leaves in the helicopter, smiling at the camera, saying, I got my revenge now for him.
So, wait, hang on. Is this just revenge on revenge on revenge? Like,
I guess.
Dad throws him off, son throws him in. And then Dad throws him off again.
It's just Tekken being Tekken sometimes. Awesome. It doesn't. I think that Tekken 3 kind of changes how the story is going to be told because they do make a bunch of changes to the story.
Got you.
But in number 2, it's another kind of revenge story where the dad is getting revenge now.
Yeah, like he's just trying to, I guess, probably also to stop Kazuya from trying to, take over the Mishima Zaibatsu and just wants to get it back because he feels like that Kazuya is being a bit too cruel with how he is as the place.
Wow, so like it seems like whoever wins this competition, like their soul gets corrupted and they become cruel, kind of.
It's the meaning of power. Power to Kazuya and the others is everything. They just want more power, and the more they have, and they just want to stop anybody who tries to take that away from them. That's why. The devil gene is a little bit more retconned on this part because Kazuya eventually uses the devil gene to stop Heihachi, but Heihachi proves to be, a much more stronger foe because he has fought someone who used the devil gene before, his wife who had it, and so it's not a big problem for him, honestly.
Yeah, let's not forget that, Heihachi killed his wife.
Yeah,
broke her neck, like
snapped her neck.
Neck.
She was trying to kill him though. Like we can't lie the fact that she was trying to kill him too because of the terrible things that he would do in the world. She isn't wrong. He did do a lot of terrible things. So yeah, she was trying to be like the good person here and trying to stop the big enemy that would eventually, hurt everything in the later futures.
That will eventually throw his son off of a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And into a volcano, apparently.
And then into a volcano.
Yeah, that's kind of a crazy story. I don't even know how they kind of got away with that.
was called the late 90s.
I mean, Namco. I
fun.
mean, Bandai really liked. People really liked the first game of Tekken, so Namco said, "You know what? We're just gonna make another. We're gonna make a sequel to the series." And eventually, it caused up to 1 or 2 years later, we got Tekken 2.
What were some of the changes or advancements in 2 as opposed to 1?
Well, I say that if I talk about which one I would prefer, Tekken 1 or 2, I would definitely say the sequel because I feel like the sequel made the gameplay a lot more faster and much more smoother to really like. They gave Kazuya a new stun mechanic where if you crouch and when he's about to head up, you press the right punch button and he does a stun mechanic that stuns the opponent and you could be able to get damage off of that.
So it sounds like 2 got better because you were saying in our last podcast that 1 was based off of the arcade game, but 2 sounds like now they're going into like we're playing
Console.
place. Yeah, we're putting our time into console stuff.
Is it still on PS1 for
Yeah, it's
Tekken
still on.
2?
It's still on PS1 for this one. We still weren't on to the PS2 generation yet until this was like probably 2 years after Tekken 1 was made. And so eventually we got their hands on the sequel, and they ended up releasing it on arcades first in Japan, and then released it out console wise a few years, like probably I guess a year or a few months after.
Cool. And which one sold more? Did Tekken 1 sell more or did Tekken 2 sell more?
I was thinking the same thing, dude.
like what were sales like?
I think the first game probably sold like probably 6.6 million copies console wise, and I feel like that the sequel did I think a bit more better. But I would say that out of all of them, I say Tekken 8 sold the most out of the PS1 games with 9 million copies sold worldwide, with a lot of people really liking that the follow up game after the second game.
Yeah.
I mean, by that point, by the later Tekkens, it's like you have people who might not even know the stories, like me,
True.
who
Me
are
too.
just like, oh, a new game came out, like, let me just buy this thing because
Let's
people are
just fight.
talking about it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
know?
because like Tekken 8 now, like if you want to find out the story, they have special like recap parts that talk about the story very quickly, like from Tekken 1 all the way up to 7 now, because you can find them in the gallery gallery stuff. And after like seeing them, you'll be able to understand like the story and where we are now with Tekken 8.
In 2, are you still using the same player?
I mean, of course, yeah, but I ended up using Heihachi so I can be able to go through the canonical ending, like the actual ending that is canon up to the rest of the point.
And what's that ending?
Like Heihachi ends up defeating Kazuya, and then the Kazuya turns into it lets his devil gene out because he couldn't be able because he was being defeated, and since the devil gene awakens when you're completely almost about to die or stuff, it caused Kazuya to basically take down that part. But also for some of the new characters here, I almost forgot this one character. Her name is Jun Kazama. She's part of the Kazama family who has the special purifying ability that Angel has too, the ability to purify and stop the devil gene from consuming the host. So Jun tries her best. So eventually Jun and Kazuya end up fighting in the tournament. We don't know. I don't know where Jun was able to progress through the story, but I don't think she made it throughout the final parts of it. And eventually, her and Kazuya got into somewhat of a relationship, and eventually, it caused Kazuya and her making a child, and the child is gonna be in the next game afterwards.
That's hype. You
crazy.
see, like
Yeah.
that? I needed that. I needed that.
Little twist.
Yeah, like is the son of what was her name? June and Kazuya. Now is he gonna throw his granddad and his dad off a cliff? In number 3, that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Everyone's throwing people off cliffs.
We'll see. That's honestly pretty great. We'll see. Like I think that Tekken 3 ends up talking about it. I'll eventually get into that one as well.
Yeah. So what is the bridge? Without giving away Tekken 3, what are some? Is that the ending that leads to Tekken 3?
Tekken 2, it leads up to that ending where Kazuya ends up getting thrown by Heihachi or Kazuya gets thrown by Heihachi off of a volcano. Like Heihachi throws him into a volcano to make sure that the devil gene is no longer going to exist in the world, and it doesn't happen. But he kind of didn't. But it ends up not working in the end because before Kazuya left, he left Jun a present, which was the child that he made with her, and that eventually moves into the next game.
Okay, question about Angel, right? Angel was supposed to purify Kazuya of the devil gene, but obviously she failed. So, like, what happened to her? Do we find that out in Tekken 3
Well, we only get to see her probably during the Tekken Tag games specifically, like Tekken Tag 2, where she comes back and makes an appearance again. And her ending in that one is just about her stopping Devil Kazuya. And, well, it's not really canon. It does show that, I mean, at least she was trying to do something, but eventually Angel wasn't able to stop Kazuya before fighting his father. And Jun ends up using her ability of the Kazamas to be able to like purify the devil gene, but it didn't work in the end because Kazuya ends up almost dying and the devil gene takes control over his body, eventually, making a different consciousness. Actually, like, because during like probably after Tekken 3, after like 4, Kazuya ends up coming back probably in Tekken 4, but instead of the devil gene being like an opposite part, he was able to find a way to put those two things together. Like now now the devil gene is no longer a consciousness, it's now like a part of him now. But he still has the same goal of wanting to have world domination.
So that's his end goal.
Yeah, that's his end goal up from Tekken 4 all the way up to 8 now.
Wait, okay, but in back to Tekken 2 because we're not there yet. In Tekken 2, Kazuya. In the first one, Tekken 1, he was a good guy. But in
Yeah.
Tekken 2, he kind of becomes the bad guy, right?
Yeah, because he got consumed by power and also because the devil gene as well, changing his attitude.
Changing his attitude. So, like, the devil gene, can you just explain one more time what the devil gene is? Is like a...
So it's a
I know
genetic.
his mom had it.
So it's like a genetic passed down from the Harijo family. From what Harada basically explained, he said that the devil gene is like a genetic is like a genetic. How do I say this? Like a genetic passing to people who are born with the Harijo. So if you make a child with the Harijo family that has the devil gene in them, it gets passed down to them by genetics. But every time you pass out the devil gene to someone, you give them half of of the devil gene. So like if one of them has like 100% of the devil gene, they have to give 50% of that devil gene to their child because of the genetics. And so that child has half of their parents' devil gene. So Kazumi gave 50% of her devil gene to Kazuya, and so she's a lot more weaker when she turns into her devil gene form. When she turns into her devil form, it's a lot weaker. It's not as strong as it is. And so
it's 50% now.
yeah, and though Kazuya has it, he ends up making a child with Jun, which he has to sacrifice half of his devil gene power towards the child that he made. So he's a lot more weaker, which eventually caused Heihachi to take the advantage of him because, since he's a lot more weaker, he's able to win and defeat Kazuya's devil form.
Dang. Okay. This is crazily making more sense.
This is making more sense now, right?
Yeah, because I've been hearing about... Yeah, because I tried my best
like,
to at least, like, understand what the devil gene was, because they kept explaining this throughout the later parts of the series, and eventually I was able to put all the pieces together.
Yeah. So on Tekken 2, who don't you like playing with?
I think the only one I don't really like playing with mostly would be, I guess probably, how do I say this? It's still, I would say that it wouldn't be like Martial Law. He's technically like, the Bruce Lee cameo for the Tekken games or for a lot of other fighting games. I don't really like playing with them most of the time because his moveset isn't really there for me because it's hard to time the kicks and also to time the punches properly well. So he's probably like my least favorite character to play in that game.
More punch based or kick based?
I guess probably more kick based, I guess.
Got you. Question for you with PlayStation. When do the bumpers on the top of the controller start coming into Tekken?
I think the bumpers start coming into the game like probably during the release of Tekken 4.
Oh, so way later.
Yeah, so probably
Not
during
yet,
the PS2 era, that's when they started using the bumpers as like to put inputs for your controller.
Did they have bumpers on PS1? I can't remember.
I think so, yeah. I think they did have the bumpers on there, but they weren't really used much other than to just be there, like, for the cameras and stuff like that, just to move the camera around.
Oh, okay. Got you. For other games too, though, it's probably used for more, but not in Tekken. Yeah.
Here's something like we should have talked about this in Tekken 1, but the soundtrack to Tekken.
Oh.
We're in a music studio and we forgot to talk about the music.
I say that the music in Tekken is pretty good. I gotta say, one of my favorite soundtracks would probably be throughout the later games, like Electric Fountain. That song sounds pretty good.
No, but specifically Tekken 2 soundtrack, is it the same as Tekken 1? Is it a different soundtrack? Is there like a Tekken theme?
I guess probably because like Tekken 2's I guess soundtrack is pretty good. But Kazuya's soundtrack, they sound more like a drum roll, like a mighty drum roll, and they had like probably like digitalized sound to it as well. And I gotta say that the first soundtrack wasn't bad. Like the menu select theme is pretty good. It sounds pretty amazing for what it is. And I think probably the second game adds a little bit more charm to the mix by adding a lot more musical notes to it as well. It sounds pretty good for what it is.
Yeah, that's a big thing. It's a huge, the music aspect.
Yeah.
Pulling out my old, I think it was NES and 64. As soon as you turn it on and the game pops on, like my brain would just get flooded with nostalgia and just be like, "Whoa, I forgot about this." So it's a huge, huge factor when playing the games. Like 100%. I'm curious. Now I'm curious to like actually go check out some of the soundtracks to see where it leads, because
sample it.
it was made by Japanese, correct?
Yeah.
They make incredible music for almost every game ever made. Like, do you think about Super Mario Brothers?
Yeah.
Like, all those are like iconic.
Yeah, I would say Super Mario 64 is a pretty cool game when it came to soundtrack. It's pretty good that Nintendo made something like that. But Bandai also stepped up their game too, and Sony ended up helping with that project as well. Because and the fact is that like Tekken games were like pretty much one of the PlayStation exclusives, like until eventually Tekken 6 and Tekken and the Tekken Tag Tournament 2 games after that ended up all coming over to Xbox as well.
Oh, okay. So it was a late edition.
Yeah, another thing that just came to mind, like, when I think about Tekken, I think about other fighting games, and like one of the other fighting games for PlayStation at least has been like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. I'm wondering, like, were those games like, and I know those are definitely arcade games. I've played arcade versions of those games. So, like, were there versions of those games out at the same time, and were they competing with the Tekken series?
I'm not sure. I think Street Fighter started probably around the early 2000s, and Tekken was around, like, probably the 90s or so with that. And I think probably when it came to talking about Tekken specifically or with Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, like, if you think of those games, like, those games, we consider them as, like, the big three of fighting games. Like, if you're talking about the big three, it's Mortal Kombat, Tekken, and Street Fighter. All three of those games represent something with their characters and their gameplays.
Definitely. Cool. You have anything else to wrap up on Tekken 2?
I would say that I think Tekken 2 is a pretty good, follow-up after the first game, because it's really, really amazing to see that, Bandai decided to make a following game after the success of the first one. And I do think that this second game is honestly a pretty good follow-up.
Yeah. But it only gets better.
Yeah, it only gets better with the later games.
What about 3?
3, yeah.
So, yeah, it only gets better with 3. Henry already told us, get ready for 3. We're going to be doing it... maybe on Monday, we'll say, but Tekken said, oh my gosh, I got Tekken on the brain. Henry said, I'm going to need a little bit of time to talk about Tekken 3 because he's going to go to town on that one, right? You have a lot to say about Tekken 3?
Yeah, I have a lot to say about that one. It's a pretty good, I would say that out of all the Tekken games, I think that out of the PS1 ones, I think Tekken 3 is probably my favorite one to talk about.
Cool. So make sure you guys come back in, check out Tekken 3 episode. This one's going to be a good one. And then we're going to keep moving forward from there. And then we'll still stay on PlayStation pretty much as we go forward. But the evolution changes because consoles start to change.
Yeah, because really, I really do like Tekken 3. It's probably one of my favorite ones to talk about when it comes to talking about, the games, because I really do like the step up that they did with the game.
Cool.
When it came to the gameplay, it's pretty amazing.
All right, you heard it first. Come back for our next episode. We're going to talk about Tekken 3. Everybody say peace.
Peace. See you guys next time.